They took his father's jacket, set it on fire, laughed while it burned. What those boys didn't understand was what that patch carried. The miles, the favors, the people Big Roy Miller had stood up for when no one else would. By the next morning, engines were rolling into town. Some clubs you don't call, and some debts don't stay buried. Jake Miller had become an expert at disappearing. Not literally, though some days he wished he could. He'd perfected the art of walking through hallways without making eye contact, sitting in the back corner of classrooms where teachers forgot his name, eating lunch in the library where nobody asked questions. 11 years old and already a ghost. It had been 13 months since his father died. Heart condition, the doctors said. Roy Miller, Big Roy to everyone who knew him, dropped in the garage one Tuesday morning, wrench still in his hand. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. School became background noise after that. His mom worked double shifts at the hospital, came home exhausted, microwaved dinners in silence. His grades slipped from B's to D's. Teachers used words like troubled and needs intervention in emails his mother didn't have time to read. Jake stopped caring what they called him. The house felt wrong now, too quiet. His father's tools still hung in the garage, untouched. His boots sat by the door. Sometimes Jake walked past Roy's workshop and caught the scent of motor oil and leather, and for half a second he'd forget. Then he'd remember, and the air would go thin. One Thursday afternoon, while his mom slept before her night shift, Jake went into the attic. He wasn't looking for anything specific, just something that didn't feel empty. Boxes of old tax returns, Christmas decorations, a milk crate full of VHS tapes. Then, shoved in the corner beneath a tarp, he found the old trunk. The leather jacket inside was heavier than he expected. Worn brown leather, creased from years on the road, smelling like gasoline and dust and something he couldn't name but recognized instantly. His father. The back showed the Iron Vultures patch, a bird with spread wings, stitched in faded thread. Along the collar, in his dad's messy handwriting, ran a line of text. For Jake, when you're ready to ride your own road. Jake pressed it to his chest and breathed in slowly. The ache was still there, but it no longer filled every inch of his chest. He wore it the next day. Walking into school felt different. The jacket hung loose on his shoulders, sleeves too long. But he didn't care. Kids stared. A few pointed. One girl asked if it was real. Jake kept his head down and said nothing, same as always. Lunch came. Jake headed for the library, but the door was locked. Some assembly. He circled back toward the cafeteria, then cut through the side exit near the gym. That's when he heard them. Nice costume, Miller. Patrick Holt leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed, flanked by two other 8th graders. Patrick was everything Jake wasn't. Tall, loud, confident. His dad ran Holt Development, funded half the school's programs, chaired the PDA. Patrick wore expensive sneakers and talked like consequences didn't exist for people like him. Jake tried to walk past. Patrick stepped in front of him. I asked you a question. Where'd you get the biker costume? Halloween store. It was my dad's, Jake said quietly. Oh right, the drunk guy with the motorcycle gang. It's a club, and he wasn't. Sure, my dad says those guys are just criminals with bikes. Losers pretending to be tough. Patrick reached out and flicked the patch. This is trash. Jake's hands balled into fists, but he didn't move. Patrick smiled, reached into his pocket, pulled out a silver lighter. Let's see how tough it really is. One of the other boys handed Patrick a small can. Lighter fluid, probably stolen from someone's dad's garage. Jake's heart hammered. He wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to punch Patrick in his smug face. But his legs wouldn't move. Patrick sprayed the jacket. Once, twice. The chemical smell stung Jake's nose. Take it off, Patrick said. Unless you want to go up with it. Jake's fingers trembled as he slipped out of the jacket. Patrick snatched it, tossed it on the ground, and flicked the lighter. The flames caught instantly. Orange and blue flames licked at the leather, chewing through the patch, the stitching, the words his father had written. Jake watched without blinking. His hands shook. The laughter felt louder than the fire. They walked off high-fiving like they'd earned something instead of destroyed it. When the fire died, Jake knelt down, picked up what remained, scorched, stinking, scarred beyond wearing. He folded it carefully, tucked it under his arm, and walked home through the back streets where nobody would see him. That night, he didn't tell his mom. Just set the burned jacket on his bed and stared at it until the room went dark. Then he got on his bike and rode to the only place that made sense anymore. The truck stop diner off Route 9, where the Iron Vultures still met every Thursday night. The diner smelled like coffee and diesel fuel. Jake pushed through the glass door just after 8, still clutching the burned jacket. The place was half empty. A trucker at the counter, a waitress refilling salt shakers, and in the back corner booth, the Iron Vultures. 6 of them tonight. Eric Owens sat at the head of the table, silver beard neatly trimmed, reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied a road map. Blaze sat across from him, tattooed arms folded, a scar running down his left cheek from a wreck in '03. The others Jake recognized but didn't know well. Tiny, Grizz, Spider, and a younger guy named Crow who'd only been patched in last year. Eric looked up first. His eyes went from Jake's face to the bundle under his arm, and something shifted in his expression. He didn't say anything, just folded the map, removed his glasses, and gestured to the empty seat beside him. Jake slid into the booth, set the jacket on the table. The room went quiet. Even the trucker at the counter turned to look. Blaze reached out slowly, pulled the jacket toward him, turned it over. The back patch was barely recognizable, charred edges, melted thread, the vulture's wings reduced to black smears. He found the collar, squinted at the faded writing still visible beneath the soot. Who did this? Blaze's voice was calm, too calm. Jake told them everything. The gym, Patrick Holt, the lighter fluid, how he just stood there and watched it burn. When he finished, nobody spoke for a long moment. Eric rubbed his jaw. Greg Holt's kid. Jake nodded. Figures, Tiny muttered. That guy's been trying to shut us down for years. Calls us a public disturbance every time we ride through town. Blaze set the jacket down gently, like it was something sacred. This ain't about leather, he said quietly. This is about legacy. This is about Roy. Eric pulled out his phone. Didn't ask permission. Just dialed. Tommy? Yeah, it's Eric. Listen, I need you to spread the word. Roy Miller's kid just had his old man's jacket burned by some rich punk. Yeah, Roy. Big Roy. I know, brother. That's what I'm saying. He paused, listened. Saturday morning. We're riding. Pass it on. He hung up, dialed again. Mitch, you got a minute? Good. Remember that run Roy made back in '09? The one where he pulled your prospect's sister out of that bad situation. Right? Well, his boy just got disrespected in a way that can't slide. Saturday. Bring whoever wants to roll. Calls stacked up faster than Jake could follow. Names, places, promises, all spoken with quiet certainty. Within an hour, Jake sat in that booth watching grown men. Men with decades of road behind them. Men who'd seen things Jake couldn't imagine. Make promises on behalf of a kid they barely knew, because of a man they'd never forget. Spider leaned forward. Kid, you ever hear about the ride your old man made to Helena? Jake shook his head. Club had this young prospect, maybe 19. His sister was stuck in a bad relationship up in Montana. Boyfriend getting violent, cops weren't helping. The prospect wanted to go get her himself, but he was green, didn't know how to handle it. Your dad heard about it at a meeting, didn't ask for permission, just got on his bike at midnight and rode. For 100 miles in a thunderstorm. Showed up at her apartment with his jacket on, told the boyfriend if he ever touched her again, he'd have to answer to more than local cops. Brought her back himself. Took 2 days. The club was pissed, Blaze added. Breaking protocol like that. But every other club that heard about it, they respected him for it. Roy never waited for permission. If something needed doing, he was already on the road. Eric's phone buzzed. Then again. Text messages rolling in. Iron Hawks are coming, he said, reading. Colorado Springs chapter bringing 12 bikes. Renegades out of Kansas confirmed. Devil's Backbone from Wyoming. They're asking if we need them. Crow looked up from his own phone. Boss, I just heard from a buddy in New Mexico. Words spreading fast. By midnight, commitments kept coming in. Jake sat there, exhausted and confused, watching men he didn't know pledge to ride for him because of something his father did years ago. Something Jake was only now beginning to understand. Around 2 in the morning, Eric's phone rang one more time. He answered, listened, and his eyebrows went up. You're sure? No, I'm not questioning it, I'm just… Yeah, we'll be ready. He hung up, looked at Blaze. Angels are coming. The table went silent. Hell's angels, Tiny whispered. 3 of them, out of respect. Eric turned to Jake. Your dad once helped one of their members in a bad spot. They don't forget things like that. And they don't ride for just anybody. Jake didn't know what to say, didn't understand what any of this meant. He just knew that something had been set in motion, something bigger than him, bigger than a burned jacket. Blaze stood up, placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow morning you're going to need a jacket. But we'll handle it. Eric smiled, tired but genuine. Your old man left detailed notes about everything, including that jacket. We'll make it right. You just be ready at 7 a.m. Jake rode home as the sky turned gray, his legs burning from exhaustion. But when he collapsed into bed, he didn't feel alone anymore. Somewhere out there, engines were starting. Roads were being planned. And over 200 riders were heading his way. All of it for a boy most of them had never met, because of a man none of them had ever forgotten. Jake woke to a sound he'd only heard in old videos. The deep, synchronized rumble of motorcycles. Dozens of them. He rolled out of bed, stumbled to the window, and pulled back the curtain. His street had vanished beneath chrome and leather. Bikes lined both sides of the road as far as he could see. Harleys, Indians, custom builds with exhaust pipes gleaming in the early light. Men and women stood beside their machines, some drinking coffee from thermoses, others checking tire pressure or adjusting mirrors. Patches from clubs he'd never heard of covered their backs. Iron Hawks, Devil's Backbone, Road Reapers, the Renegades. And there, parked directly in front of his house, 3 bikes with the unmistakable Death's Head insignia. His mom stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Jake, she whispered. Your father would be… She couldn't finish, just pulled him into a hug that lasted longer than any since the funeral. At exactly 7, Eric knocked on the door. He carried a leather jacket, not new, but immaculately restored. The Iron Vultures patch had been hand-stitched by someone who understood the craft, every detail recreated with precision. Inside the collar, the same words, for Jake, when you're ready to ride your own road. But now, on the opposite side, a new line had been added, Roy Big Dog Miller, always riding ahead. Your dad's road name, Eric said as Jake slipped it on. Thought you should carry it with you. The jacket fit better than the original. Someone had tailored it specifically for him. Jake looked down at the patch, ran his fingers over the stitching, and felt something unlock in his chest. Eric placed a hand on his shoulder. Ready? Jake nodded. They walked out together. The moment Jake appeared, engines roared to life. Not aggressive, but ceremonial. A wall of sound that rattled windows 3 blocks away. Neighbors emerged onto porches. A woman across the street recorded on her phone. An elderly man, wearing a faded Vietnam veteran cap, stood at attention and saluted. Blaze approached on a matte black Road King, a second helmet in his hand. You're riding with me. Stay close, don't do anything stupid, and when we get there, you walk like you own the place. Got it. Jake climbed on. The seat vibrated beneath him as Blaze kicked the engine. Around them, the convoy organized itself. Seasoned riders who'd done this 1,000 times, falling into formation without a single spoken word. The Hell's Angels took point. The Iron Vultures flanked Jake directly. Everyone else filled in behind, 2 by 2, stretching back beyond what Jake could see. They rolled out around 7. The route to school normally took 8 minutes by car. The convoy took 20, moving deliberately through every major intersection, stopping traffic, commanding attention. People stepped out of coffee shops to watch. Construction crew stopped working. Someone's car alarm went off from the vibration and nobody bothered to silence it. Jake's middle school sat on a corner lot, visible from 2 streets. By the time they arrived, students had already gathered at the windows. Teachers stood frozen in doorways. The principal, Mr. Davison, walked out to the front steps, phone already pressed to his ear. The bikes filled the drop-off lane, the visitor parking, the street. They lined up with military precision, engines idling in perfect synchronization. Blaze cut his engine. Silence fell like a curtain. Jake climbed off. Eric appeared beside him. Blaze on the other side. 3 Hell's Angels stood behind them, arms crossed, saying nothing. Their presence alone a statement. They walked Jake to the front entrance. Every step felt amplified. Kids pressed against windows. A teacher dropped her coffee. Jake spotted Patrick across the main hallway, frozen near his locker, face drained of color. Their eyes met for half a second. Patrick looked away first. Jake kept walking, didn't stop. He let the jacket speak. The men behind him didn't need to. By 3rd period, the video had gone viral. Someone's mom had filmed the convoy from her car and posted it with the caption, "Over 200 bikers escorting bullied kid to school after his late father's jacket was burned." It hit 50,000 views in 2 hours. Local news picked it up by lunch. Jake was in algebra when the intercom crackled. "Jake Miller, please report to the principal's office." The room went silent. Everyone stared. But this time it felt different. He walked through empty hallways, past trophy cases and bulletin boards, and pushed open the office door. Inside, Mr. Davison sat behind his desk, looking exhausted. Across from him, in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Jake's mom made in a month, sat Greg Holt. "Jake, have a seat," Mr. Davison said carefully. Greg didn't wait. "Let's cut through this. My son made a mistake. Kids push limits. It happens. But this circus you've created, bringing a gang to school property, disrupting the entire district, is unacceptable. You need to be suspended, at minimum, for inciting—" "There's video," Mr. Davison interrupted quietly. Greg's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "Of the jacket burning. A student filmed it. It's been sent to the district office, the school board, and apparently half the internet." He turned his computer screen. "It's on the local news right now." Jake watched Greg's face shift, from confidence to confusion to something that looked like panic. The news segment showed the burned jacket, interviews with veterans in the community, a statement from the Iron Vultures about Roy's service. The anchor used words like disgraceful and bullying crisis. Greg's phone buzzed. Then again. He glanced at it and his expression went cold. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said tightly. "My attorney will—" "Your board seat was withdrawn this morning," Mr. Davison said. "The mayor's office called an hour ago. They're distancing themselves from the situation. The superintendent wants Patrick removed from campus for the safety of all students." "Safety? He's the victim here. He's being targeted by—" "Your son set another student's property on fire, Mr. Holt, on school grounds, while mocking his dead father." Mr. Davison's voice stayed level, but something sharp lived underneath it. "Jake will not be disciplined. Patrick will be transferred. That's final." Greg stood so fast his chair scraped. He pointed at Jake. "This isn't over." But his phone kept buzzing. When Greg Holt left, he didn't look at anyone. Mr. Davison waited until the door closed. "You okay, son?" Jake nodded. He was better than okay. The weight was still there, but it no longer sat on his shoulders alone. Outside, engines still rumbled. Waiting. 3 weeks later, the Iron Vultures clubhouse looked nothing like Jake had imagined. No dark corners or shady deals, just a converted garage with mismatched furniture, a coffee maker that had seen better days, and walls covered in photographs from decades of rides. Men who looked dangerous at first glance played cards, argued about carburetors, and argued even louder about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. Jake had started coming on Saturdays. At first, he just sat and watched, uncertain of his place. But Eric had other plans. "Come here," he'd called out that first morning, waving Jake over to a workbench where a disassembled engine lay in pieces like a mechanical puzzle. "Your old man could rebuild one of these blindfolded. Time you learned why." For hours, Eric walked him through each component: pistons, crankshaft, valves, gaskets. His hands were patient, his explanations clear. When Jake struggled to fit a cylinder head properly, Eric didn't take over. Just adjusted Jake's grip and said, "Feel that? The metal's telling you which way it wants to go. Your dad used to say engines talk if you're willing to listen." The stories came in pieces between oil changes and loose bolts. A blizzard ride for insulin. A fight between rival clubs that ended with coffee instead of blood. A paycheck handed over without witnesses, followed by weeks of overtime to make up for it. "He never mentioned any of this," Jake said quietly, wiping grease from a wrench. "That's because Roy didn't do things for credit," Blaze said from across the garage, where he was rebuilding a transmission. "He did them because they needed doing." One afternoon, Blaze called Jake over and handed him a worn pair of leather riding gloves. "These were your dad's first set. He wanted you to have them when the time came. Guess that's now." Jake slipped them on. They were too big, but he didn't care. "You know what the hardest part of riding is?" Blaze asked. Jake shook his head. "Knowing when to lead and when to follow. Your dad understood that better than anyone. He'd ride out front when someone needed protection, fall back when someone needed space. That's what made him big dog. Not the size of his bike or how loud his engine was. It was knowing when to show up and when to step aside." The Roy Miller Memorial Ride launched on a Sunday morning in late spring. Over 300 bikes showed up, more than the convoy that had escorted Jake to school. They rode a 50-mile loop through the county, ending at a park where veterans' families gathered for a fundraiser. Local businesses donated. The mayor showed up for a photo opportunity, though he avoided the Iron Vultures directly. Greg Holt's name didn't appear in any coverage. Patrick hadn't returned to school. Rumor was they'd moved to a different district. Jake stood at the registration table, watching riders sign in, reading the dedications they wrote on the memorial wall. "For my brother who didn't make it home. In memory of SSGT Edgar Webb. For all the ones still fighting battles nobody sees." His father's name appeared more than once. A woman approached, late 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen trouble. "You're Roy's boy." Jake nodded. "Your dad saved my son's life. Not literally, maybe, but close enough. Danny came back from Afghanistan with nightmares he couldn't shake. Roy found him at a gas station one night, looking bad. Didn't know Danny from anybody. Just talked to him for 3 hours. Gave him this number." She held up a card, Iron Vultures contact info. "Told him veterans don't have to fight alone. Danny's doing better now. Works at a bike shop. Got married last year." Her voice cracked. "I never got to thank your father. So I'm thanking you." She walked away before Jake could respond. That night, back at the clubhouse, Jake pulled out the jacket and read the note again. "When you're ready to ride your own road." The words felt different now. Heavier. More real. Eric sat down beside him. "You understand it now, don't you? It's not about motorcycles," Jake said. "No. It's about showing up when things get hard. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. It's about knowing that some debts aren't paid in money. They're paid in loyalty, time, and showing up when nobody else will." Eric paused. "Your dad didn't leave you a bike, Jake. He left you a family. And we're not going anywhere." Jake folded the jacket carefully. Outside, Blaze and Tiny argued about the best route for next month's ride. Crow told a terrible joke that somehow still got laughs. Someone turned on music, old rock, the kind his dad used to play in the garage. The anger loosened its grip. Something steadier took its place. The jacket had burned. But what it represented, honor, brotherhood, sacrifice, had only grown stronger. Those flames hadn't destroyed his father's legacy. They'd revealed it. And as Jake looked around the clubhouse at the men who'd shown up for a kid they barely knew, He realized he wasn't just Roy Miller's son anymore. He was part of something bigger. Jake folded the jacket and set it beside him. Outside, engines fired one by one, just men getting ready to ride. Blaze laughed at something Tiny said. Crow missed a gear and cursed loud enough to draw applause. Jake smiled to himself. The road would keep moving, and now so would he. Jake's father left him more than a jacket. He left him a family. Sometimes, respect isn't given, it's earned. And sometimes it's inherited. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story reminded you why brotherhood matters, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories that stay with you long after they end. See you in our next video.